Hi, my name is Greg Pak,
And I'm Evan Narcisse.
and you are listening to the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.
Well, greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 214 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. Hi, I'm Rick Verbanis, and I'm your host, and I'm joined by the best gosh darn co-host out there. His name is Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob, we might just make it. Did that thought ever cross your brain? Well, regardless, I would rather take my chance out there on the ocean than stay here and die on this island, spending the rest of my life talking to a damn volleyball.
All right, all right, all right. So Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
I can see the volleyball. I got the
Mm-hmm.
FedEx plane
Yeah.
crashing.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of the movie though. Castaway?
It was
Was it
Castaway.
Castaway?
It was
Good
Castaway.
movie. Good
It
movie.
was. Came out. You know what? It came out in 2000.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Gosh, it seems like
20.
yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out a quarter of a century ago.
All right. So what's the connection, Rick?
Well, Bob, do you know what the name of the volleyball was?
I can't remember Felix, Frederick.
I'll give you a
I-
hint,
all right.
right? It was the name of the
Wilson.
man. Yes.
There we go. Spalding. No. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so why am I referencing that in today's opening?
I got it now because we're
Yeah?
going to be talking to the writers of the new Sam Wilson book coming out
That's
in
right.
January.
Sam Wilson, Captain America. Yeah. We got both writers of the brand new series on the show today, Greg Pak and Evan Narcisse. So looking forward to talking with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this book. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. How was your weekend, Bob?
It was pretty good. I don't know. I get a little stuff around the house, little honeydews, that sort of thing. Had to catch up on my mandatory professor training for the university. That took hours, Rick. The hours that I'm sure you got to do that mandatory training where you work.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Do it all the
painful.
time.
Painful.
Mm-hmm.
So, how about you? What'd you do this weekend?
Well, if you notice, my voice might be a little deeper than normal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not a growth spurt.
Okay.
It is actually I spent yesterday about a 12-hour day going to the Philadelphia Eagles game.
Oh my goodness.
And so once a year, my buddies and I, we get together, we do an annual game, and so a couple of kids were brought, not mine, unfortunately, but yeah, there was like five of us. We hung out, and I really take to heart my responsibility as a fan in the stands. So when they flash up on the screen, because it's a defensive, you know, big, third down, fourth down, and it's get loud, make some noise. So I'm there with a very long, extended yell. And so totally forgot that we're recording today.
Yeah, you had to take like a Ludens or a Vicks or something.
I didn't
like
talk
that, right?
much today. Yeah,
Yeah.
at work. Yeah, thankfully.
It's mostly hand signals, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was my
good.
day yesterday. Yeah, had
Good
a lot
for
of
you.
fun.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. That's a long time. That's a big commitment. 12 hours.
Well, I don't live near Philadelphia, so
Oh,
it's
that's
not
a good
like
point. Yeah.
it's not a close,
Yeah.
10-minute drive. It's a
Right.
little long for
You
me.
don't take the helicopter down.
No, it's on
No.
it's on the fritz.
Yeah. Yeah. The Thanos copter. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
It would be. So just real quick before we get into today's show, birthdays. There's a special birthday coming up. Now, if you are listening to this when this comes out, this should come out on Wednesday, the 13th. The 17th, celebrating a birthday, one Mr. Ed Brubaker.
Oh, Big Ed.
Big Ed.
Big Ed. Happy birthday, Ed. Happy to see you on the show.
He made it, I think it was number 2 in the Captain America favorite writer bracket that we did during March Madness last year. I think it was, or 2 years ago. I think Ed Brubaker was number 2.
He's distinctive. You know, his contributions are certainly distinctive.
Yeah. You know, that's a nice way of saying something when you don't really like it, Bob.
I loved it.
Okay.
But it's a standout, right? It's a stand. I mean, it is
looks
very
interesting.
Different.
Yes.
My dad
It's
used
distinctive.
to say it's different. I take him out to restaurant, and come out to visit me. I take him out to fish tacos or California cuisine, and I'd be like, "Dad, what'd you think? Did you like it?" You go, "It's different."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
that's how you came across.
No,
he has
I
a
didn't
very
mean it that way.
distinctive. Yeah.
But I think, certainly his writing is very distinctive among all the writers who have contributed to Cap over the years.
Yeah, he wrote Steve in a certain light.
Mm-hmm.
More of that. He wasn't super soldier, wasn't superhero, more of a super agent.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much a thriller. Thriller. Yeah.
Speaking of thriller, for all you listeners out there in the future, Bob and I are here on the night before election day, and we have no idea what's in store for us.
We really don't. In fact, as soon as we hit the leave button, I'm going to start drinking. So
yeah, that's probably a smart idea. It's probably a smart idea. You know what I got in the mail? You know, you when you place those pre-orders for something and you totally forget.
Oh,
about
you totally
it,
forget.
and then it comes in
months
the mail.
and months and months later.
Yeah. I got my. I stopped collecting these things for a while, but I got my Funko Pop.
Christmas pop.
The Captain America and his Christmas gear. And look, the shield has a little wrapping paper on it.
Nice.
You know,
nice.
with a star.
Yeah.
Makes it look like a wreath.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah. I got a couple of those, I think, pre-orders, hanging out there someplace. I'm not sure what they are when they're coming. They'll come at the most inopportune time,
when your wife's paying
when I'm
attention.
heading out the door with my wife, we're going out and then it'll be
What's
sitting there on
this?
the doorstep. Exactly. Yep. Like clockwork. Yeah.
Pretty much. You should really make friends with your mail carrier, so you can be like, hey, listen, don't bring it by on these days. Just hold it for me.
Keep it at your house. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you know what? I'm very excited for what's coming up in the future of Captain America comics. Right? We've learned that the JMS series is coming to a close. There's a few other like one shots that JMS is doing. I can't remember if it has a Cap in it or not. But then we don't really know what's going on with Steve Rogers. So chances are it's going to probably end up being a miniseries here or there, like before. That's where we got the Captain America and Iron Man miniseries.
Yep.
That's where we got the United States of Captain America miniseries. So we got some good stories out of it. So we don't know what's happening there. But what we do know is that coming out January 1st is the Sam Wilson Captain America series. And so, it'll be nice to see him come back, because we haven't seen him in his own book since Symbol of Truth ended. And he's been in an Avengers story as Captain America, but we haven't seen him in his own story. So looking forward to that, and pretty excited to talk with the two brainchilds behind this, the two writers, Greg and Evan.
Yeah, I mean, where are they, Rick? You got them? Are they in the closet or something?
They're in the green room, Bob.
Well,
we should probably let them out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our guests today are Greg Pak and Evan Narcisse, writers of the upcoming Sam Wilson Captain America series, debuting January 1st. Greg is an American comic book writer and film director, probably best known for his work on Marvel comic characters such as X-Men, the Hulk, and Hercules. And in 2019, Pak began writing Star Wars comics for Marvel, which I have been enjoying immensely. Cap fans may know Greg for his 5-issue Red Skull Incarnate series from 2011. Now, Evan is an American comic book writer, journalist, and video game narrative designer. His comic work includes runs on Batman Gotham Knights, Rise of the Black Panther, and Wakanda. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Absolutely.
Excited to talk about the book. I think this is the first time we'll be talking with anybody outside of the creative process, right, Greg?
Exactly. Yes. We did we had to send in some quotes for the Marvel press release, but beyond that, you're the first folks. Yeah, that you're absolutely right. This is the first you're the first folks we've talked to outside of the creative team about this fun little book we're doing.
Well, we're very excited to have you on, so we appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us today. And before we get into the series and questions from our listeners, perhaps you both can share, how did you get interested in comics and how did you break into the industry?
Well, I grew up as the kind of kid. I grew up as one of those kids who drew. My mom was the kind of mom who gave us like, she hated coloring books. She gave us paper and crayons and art supplies. So I was drawing from a very young age. And then I just was obsessed with storytelling, period. So I was doing, Ray Bradbury was my hero. So I was writing short stories from the time I was like 9, and always kind of wanted to be a writer. I actually studied political science in college, and went back home to Texas to work on the Ann Richards campaign when she was running for governor for the first time. And that's what I thought I was going to do. But then I got this kind of wild chance to go to Oxford to study history. And then I ended up getting involved with a student filmmaking group and realized all the lights came on and was like, that's what I need to be doing. And I went to NYU for film school. And then after I made a movie called Robot Stories, low budget sci-fi movie, I got a meeting with Marvel and moved sideways into comics. And it was sort of like going back to my roots, to the stuff that I always loved from the very beginning. And 20 years later, almost literally, oh my God, it might even be almost exactly 20 years later, here I am, because my first Marvel comic came out in November of 2004. So it's
a happy anniversary.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm glad we get to celebrate it together, Greg.
Yeah, it's I should have brought champagne. What am I thinking?
Yeah, as for me, I'm not too dissimilar from Greg. I grew up reading comics. I learned how to read from comics, right? My earliest memories of like stories that I can still probably recall to this day are all superhero stories. Marvel and DC. Also like Greg, child of immigrant parents. So my mom didn't really get my obsession with like sequential storytelling. I went to school for political science, also NYU, and did some other things there, did a journalism minor. But I knew from, I don't know, my earliest memories of wanting to be a writer are probably like around 10, 11, 12 years old. So, I got into the journalism program at NYU, and I had a great mentor, Professor David Dent, who's still teaching there, I believe. And he's like, yeah, you should be writing. So I entered into journalism, and I started writing pop culture criticism. And that included comics and video games and whatnot. And I did that for a long, long time, up until I took a buyout at one of my former jobs and started doing narrative design consulting in the video game space. The first major project I worked on was the Miles Morales game that Insomniac Studios produced. And so since then I've been dipping my toe into video games, but comics came about a little bit before that. Black Panther is my favorite comic book character, and I wrote a lot about it at various outlets where I wrote, like Kotaku and IO9. And editor at Marvel noticed my articles and reached out via my friend Ta-Nehisi Coates and was like, "Hey, do you think Evan would like to write a Black Panther project?" And the answer was yes, and that kind of kicked off my comic career. So I've been lucky enough to dip my toes in like the pools of Marvel, and are we even allowed to talk about DC here?
You can talk about whatever you want. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've written for both the majors and some other projects, but I'm not as long tenured in comics as Greg, but I've been lucky to work on some stuff I'm really, really proud of.
Well, you've both been involved in comics for quite some time. Both have storied careers, but who are some of the greatest influences, creative-wise, in the comic industry? Greg first?
Yeah, well, I grew up. So I'm 56 years old. I've been kicking around for a while, and I used to get on my bike and ride down to Lone Star Comics in Dallas and buy. And that was when the first direct market comics started happening. You know what I mean? Where like it wasn't just newsstand comics, but when they did this thing where there are certain comics that you could only get at a comic book store. I happen to live, within biking distance of one of the best comic book stores in the country. It's just really funny when I think about it. But and I would play Robotron with my lawn mowing money, and I'd buy comics. But Moon Knight was like one of the first Marvel direct market comics. It was this premium, amazing comic with Bill Sienkiewicz art that blew my mind. Like I had never seen anything like that before. I still remember reading Moon Knight 26, which had it was a story about child abuse, but it was just so incredibly well done. It was incorporating these like child, like a child's drawings into the art. And I also remember there was this just wild little thing where like there was a no smoking sign and letters rearranged to say Moon Knight. I don't even remember what the plot significance of it was, but it was like my mind was blown. I just loved it. I loved it. I was a huge Micronauts fan, so Bill Mantlo was like my, and Michael Golden. Like I remember at that age,
artist,
like I mean, gosh, that's so, I was like 10, 11, 12 around that time, I guess. And I remember having a serious conversation with one of my teachers who was very, indulged me about how Michael Golden was on level with Michelangelo, like in terms of his craftsmanship and art. So
did you turn that into a project, like a paper, and get graded on it?
No. I just remember for some reason I was talking about it. But I actually got to, and then Michael Golden actually came to sign comics at my little comic shop, and so I got to, I went there with my little sketchbook, my little drawings of centaurs and stuff. And, I don't know. So I have a lot of great memories about that, that early time. But yeah, you were asking about influences. I mean, I was, of course, like, like I knew about the artists before I knew about the writers. You know what I mean? Like probably like most kids. So, but definitely Michael Golden and Bill Sienkiewicz were the two huge artists for me at that time. Later on, and then, so there was a time when I stopped reading. Oh yeah, and then the other huge comic for me was Usagi Yojimbo, Stan Sakai's indie comic.
Oh my God, yes.
Which I just loved. Yeah. So, I was also reading, I mean, I was picking up the Cerebus books, which I didn't even really understand at the time, except for they had like a Moon Knight spoof character called Moon Roach, which I thought was very funny. You know what I mean? So, but I was, I read a lot of different stuff, but I would say Stan Sakai, Sienkiewicz, Golden, Mantlo was a huge influence just because I loved that. I mean, he would just do anything like that kind of loopy sci-fi stuff with a lot of heart. I mean, and I think that stuck with me over the years. Years later, when I was writing the Hulk, Mantlo's run on the Hulk was a big influence. When I was reading and rereading that stuff. But Charles Schultz actually is my first and biggest influence in comics. Yeah, I mean, because those are the first comics I ever read. My mom's old Fawcett collections. They have these little paperbacks, and I would just, that was the funniest stuff I had ever seen in my life. I think that those Charles Schultz comics are still like, they're just like ingrained in me, like they're just under my skin, just like the way, like this sounds so weird and specific, but like, he's got characters saying gonna, Gonna, right? And like, like the way he would just embrace the colloquial way people talked, you know what I mean? And I think that all just really stuck with me for years and years.
Evan, that's a tough act to follow. Who you got?
I'm not scared. Man, so I'm just a little bit younger than Greg, just a couple of years. So my entry into comics was just full of like silver and bronze age stuff, right? So I love Claremont, the Marshall Rogers run on Batman was some of the first comics where I thought, oh my God, this drawing is just ridiculous. And then you find out later that Marshall Rogers was an architect, and that explains some of the way he drew Gotham cityscapes. Of course, Steen Englehart was an amazing writer on that run. So like Claremont, I read like Greg, I read a lot of Mantlo without even realizing it at the time. But the creators who really started to plant the seed in my head that I could do this were guys like Christopher Priest,
Okay.
Dwayne McDuffie, my all-time hero, just incredible. And the work of Milestone Media was incredibly formative for me when it was coming out. It was '93. I was in college, and I don't know if you guys can make out one of the compendiums up there, but that stuff has continued to stick with me, and I've been lucky enough to contribute to the revival of the Milestone Media characters. Who else? If we're gonna go comic strips and go historical, like George Harriman on Crazy Cat is some of the most amazing comics anybody will ever make. They're just incredible. Like, if anybody's out there listening who hasn't read Crazy Cat, they will blow your mind. Like, it's just, we were talking before the recording and Greg said that comics can be poetic and lyrical, and the Crazy Cat comics are some of the most poetic things you will ever read. So, who else? Man, I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but Ed Brubaker, just an amazing writer. Just everything he touches seems to be well executed and well thought out.
You might have a few listeners on here that might agree with that.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah, that's why I said I was jumping ahead. I was like, these guys would probably ask about your favorite Cap runs, and Ed's is up there. Yeah, gosh, I could go on. Kieran Gillen, I love. We're probably more contemporaries than anything else, but he's like so above and beyond what I've been able to accomplish thus far. I'll count him as an influence. Yeah, it's funny. I always say a lot of the time that the craft of comics making now in 2024 is probably better than it's ever been. There are so many different approaches, like from like mainstream superhero stuff to like indie, literary, autobiographical, nonfiction stuff. Like, if you love the form of comics, you're drowning in a sea of riches right now.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of folks overlook that. There's a lot of nostalgia for, some of the older stuff, but if you really take an objective look at just the scope of what's available to consumers and readers these days.
Like Al Ewing is bringing back thought balloons over in Thor. And I'm like, yes, do that. That's a tool that comics can use that like other media can't, like again, being a nerd of a certain age, I have nostalgia for that, some of the old storytelling techniques, but like one of my other big influences, Denny O'Neil, like I loved him so much because when he was really writing a bunch and his peers, those captions, those narrator captions, was how you got a sense of the writer's voice, right? Like, the way Don McGregor would write narration would be completely different than O'Neil, would be completely different than Claremont when he used it, which was rare. But like, like some of those old techniques we should still totally use, right? Like word balloons on covers, do that. Yes, 100%.
I miss that. I totally miss that. Yeah. Word balloons, thought balloons on the cover, absolutely.
We embrace that a lot and also just like goofy taglines and stuff on the covers. We did that with the Hulk variant book I was doing. It was so much fun.
Yeah, like, on Hulk Vereen, you got to do that in the book.
Exactly, right? Yeah, I think we even have a thing on there that said, you love it, under the title Vereen. But yeah.
Well, talking about modern comics, let's jump into the upcoming Sam Wilson Captain America series that comes out January 1st. But want to say it does have a comic dealer order cutoff of next week, which is November 25th. So make sure you let your retailers know that you want this. But here's the solicitation for number 1. Sam Wilson soars again. When Captain America attends a birthday party for Isaiah Bradley, he catches wind of a new tech venture that sounds too good to be true. Magnificent floating platforms in the sky where the disenfranchised can apply for land grants and establish their own farms. But after Sam discovers the organization's dark underbelly, he'll have to tangle with the head of security, Red Hulk. Greg Pak, Incredible Hulk, Weapon H, Evan Narcisse, Rise of the Black Panther, and Eder Messias, Phases of the Moon Knight, join forces for a high-flying, Cap adventure. So, what can you tell us about first working with artist Eder Messias? Were you familiar with his work before? Because I recognize him from his work on the Spider-Man: The Lost Hunt series, but he's relatively new, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much he's done for Marvel, but I did once we were told he's gonna be drawing the series. I looked up his stuff, and it's amazing. Very dynamic. Like he can give you like a full range of like tonalities from like really exaggerated cartoony stuff to more realistic, and he's great with body language and facial expressions, all the stuff you like look for in really good comic book storytelling. Um, it was lucky for us because I think his last assignment before this was a short story featuring Elijah Bradley, Patriot, in a Marvel's Voices anthology that I believe David Walker wrote. And so, you know, uh, reading that story that features Sam and Eli let us know that let me know that he knew the characters. He could kind of nail the specifics of their physical appearances, but also like really let it rip when it came to action and some of the other stuff. So I'm really glad Edgar's on board. He's doing a great job. It's killing us not to be able to show pages yet, but they're going to come
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, yeah, he's amazing. I mean, and there's also like one of those things where sometimes there's just serendipity involved. You know what I mean? Like Eder is Brazilian, and
Yeah.
there was a certain point when we realized, like, you know, like Alana had to send him reference for Sam's hawk, and it's a Brazilian hawk. Like in
Falcon.
comic
Yeah.
continuity, it's a specific,
I had no
you know,
idea.
species of hawk that's from Brazil. And Eder's like, oh yes, you know, like I know this hawk
Yes.
very well. You
Yeah.
know, it's just like, I mean, that kind of stuff is just gold. I mean, it's really fun when I don't know, like comics is such a collaborative thing, and we're all just emailing each other. You know what I mean? So we're not like hanging out in person, but there's still like, you know, some chemistry involved with the whole thing. And when folks are, you know, when it works, it really works. And but I second everything that Evan is saying about the art that he's turning in. Also, you know, I mean, and this is sometimes this is uncomfortable to talk about, but I like talking about uncomfortable stuff. You know, like when you're writing characters who are not white, you want to make sure you got artists who can draw people non-stereotypically. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And draw people in a variety of different, you know, a variety of different kinds of people, and have it not be, you know, not look like caricature, but but also have people look like the, you know, look like the backgrounds that they are, you know, that they're of. And Edgar's done a great job with all that. I mean, he's, you know, he gets it. And so that's just really really fun and great. There we have a lot of different black characters in this book actually, at the cookout, and he's drawing them all distinctively, you know what I mean, which is
Mhm.
really important, you know, just because everybody looks different.
Well,
um
and now we know we have a legitimate Red Wing too. So
yes,
yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, we have a an accurate Red Wing, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Culturally accurate. Yeah.
So let's get to this how you guys got into this series. So I mean, we have a few questions sent in from our patrons
Oh,
who
cool.
are very excited about the new Cap series. So we'll sprinkle them in as we go along.
Cool.
So Matthew Glover asks, what was the process of pitching this comic to Marvel? Like, how did you, you know, influence that story? And so, so maybe you could take us through how the two of you got involved, and then pitching your story to editor Alana Smith.
Well, they actually kind of pitched it to us in a way. Like the idea was, I mean, we could just say it, you know, and there's a movie coming
Yeah.
out
Do it.
with
What?
Sam Wilson. You know what I mean? So, you know, you want to have something with that. And Red Hulk's in the movie, apparently. I don't
Mhm.
know. I mean, maybe that's a spoiler. I don't know. That's what I've heard. And so it made sense to have something on the shelves that would feed into that. The great thing though is that it's not like a movie tie-in. It's
Yeah.
comics, and comics are
Yeah.
doing their own thing. So we get to do our own thing the way we should, and tell a story. And you know, I think they reached out to. I mean, I think we're a great team because we're bringing different things to the table, and And you know, like I'm like the Boy Scout, you know, like I literally was a Boy Scout as a kid. I'm like painfully lawful good to my own detriment, you know. So the whole Captain America thing has always been really compelling to me, even though I haven't really written Cap that much. I mean, actually, I've written him a lot, but not. I've never written like a solo Cap story or whatever. But I've always been obsessed with these patriotic heroes. Um, Evan knows this character and a lot of the other characters much better than I do. You know what I mean? And is bringing. I mean, I just the two of us are having so much fun with the whole thing, and I think we're killing it. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but so they ca- but yeah, so we got the chance to come back to them and pitch a story. And I mean, we had so much fun just talking it through and coming up with all these different hooks and bringing back little nuggets from other stories. And I mean, I'll let Evan talk, but I've loved every minute of writing this book with Evan.
Yeah, you know, as far as pitching, you know, without getting into spoilers or plot details, like, you know, Greg and I really wanted to write a story that spoke to the moment, you know, because that is inherent to like the Captain America legacy, right?
Yep.
You know, Captain America Comics #1, the famous cover, Steve is punching out Hitler, you know, but it didn't stop there, right? You know, during wartime, obviously he became a symbol of the war effort in the United States. And, you know, in '61, when the Marvel Age of Comics gets kicked off and, you know, Stan and Jack bring him back, like the kind of brilliance of that move, and whether it's intentional or not, I can't say, but like the brilliance of bringing back Cap, like, you know, 15, 20 years after the war had ended, thereabouts, is that like you cement his symbolism, right? You know, so like I don't remember the exact wording from the Avengers panel, but like when they kind of, you know, thaw him out and like his fatigues are ripped and the shield's on top on his chest, you're like, it's Captain America, the famous hero from World War II. And you're like, oh God, here we go. Like, um, but I think, you know, that symbolism is inherent to the Captain America legacy, whether it's Steve or other characters who've worn the stars and stripes and embodied that patriotic, heroic legacy. And you know, like there's shades to that patriotism, right? You know, we see people who are more like extreme about it, like John Walker, right? You see people who have wondered how to embody it in the first place, like when Bucky took over after Steve died, right? So like, you know, this idea of patriotism doesn't mean you have to be slavishly devoted to, you know, the kind of social scripts that we're all given. And again, Steve is a perfect example of that, you know, like obviously in the Steve Gerber runs from the '70s. You know, when he becomes Nomad, that was Gerber or Englehart. I always get
Englehart.
confused.
Yeah.
Englehart. I knew it was Englehart. Okay, but
Yeah, the
the
Steve,
two
right?
Steves. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, two Steves who wrote Steve. It's not confusing at all. But yeah, you know, when he becomes Nomad after the whole first Secret Empire storyline, like this is a man who's struggling with what it means to be a symbol and to embody a symbol. And I think that's an important character, part of all the characters who've held a mantle, right? Or in that legacy. So when we pitched, it was like, okay, we don't want to go through like the whole rigmarole of Sam questioning whether he should be doing this or not, because I feel like that's done, right? You know, he shares the mantle with Steve. They embody in different ways. So like leaning into the difference of that embodiment, like was one of the things we want to do, right? Steve shows up, but you know, at the cookout scene, you know, he's like, wow, this is what it's like to be kind of on the margins a little bit. And you know, the thing about Marvel Comics too, in particular because they represent the real world or a refracted version of it anyway, is that there are cultural histories inside the Marvel universe itself, right? So like again, when we talk about like the Avengers thawing out Steve and like looking on him at awe, it's the same thing, right? Like so there's a whole history around that, right? You look at projects that have like more of a meta layer, like say Marvel's, right? Like the ordinary guy is always in the picture, and the way they look at these kind of larger than life characters is part of the fabric of the universe itself, and that's something we want to explore. And we're kind of doing it through this new character that we're introducing, Sam's cousin Billy, who's just been a blast to write. She's like,
Oh my
yeah,
God, love her.
whatever. You were a snotty nosed kid when we were growing up. I'm not in awe of you. Like, but she has her own kind of interaction with what it means to serve this country that we're not going to get into a whole lot, but like I think one of the things that makes our pitch work is that like all up and down like the call sheet, for lack of a better term, each character is thinking about what does it mean to serve these ideals, serve the country, serve other people. And there's a lot of differences amongst our cast, and exploring that stuff is really where the juice is.
Yeah, and it's also embracing. I mean, like without without making it preachy or whatever, we are embracing this whole this struggle. Like this is a country that has deeply racist origins, that has screwed over people of color, specifically Black people, in horrendous ways throughout its entire history, and yet you have so what does it mean for a Black man to be Captain America? You know what I mean? Like, and that's and also there is a legacy of multiple Black men carrying the shield and wearing the flag, and
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to see some of those folks, and we're going to see the distinctions between them, and I think that I mean I talk about this a lot, but like I love diversity within diversity. You know what I mean? That's where the juice is. You know what I mean? Like I remember my friend Steve Orlando, comic writer Steve Orlando.
He
Remember?
was on the show last month.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
Yeah,
love
yeah.
him.
Nice.
So I remember I was on a panel with him years ago, and he was talking about writing gay characters, and about like he had a book where he had a gay villain, and he was like, I just love the fact that in this book I have a bunch of gay characters, so I can have a gay villain. Because if you only have one gay character, there's just so much pressure
Yeah.
to not like make that character a villainous stereotype or something like that. You know what I mean? And so if you only have one character of a certain background, it's hard to show the
The
breadth.
multiplicity of
Yeah,
experiences that
exactly. So if you have a bunch of different, I mean, if you got a bunch of different Black Captain Americas, you can show a lot of different takes on what that means and what the responsibility is. You know what I mean? And you got, and I also, so we're embracing all of that in all of its complexity and I mean, I'm gonna a little spoiler. Rhodey's in this book too. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, he was on the cover of #1.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
He's on there. Yeah.
with
And
Storm.
so that's also like Rhodey is also a person who serves. He's a military guy who serves the country. I mean, he comes, like he was a soldier. But and also that, and yet Sam was not a soldier. Sam was a social worker.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing distinction. I think that was really what I mean. Alana, I think, was the first one who said that to me, and I was like, that right there.
Yeah, no. Not to correct you, Greg, but
Yeah.
I'm certain in our conversations, like I've said that like Sam is more of an every person than Steve. Like Sam is literally a guy from Harlem who was a social worker, took a vacation, and next thing you know, fighting the Red Skull. Like, he wasn't prepared for this, but in a way, like because he's always been like amongst the people, I think, let me put it this way. Sam and Steve are standing at the corner. I think more people could be afraid and shy to talk to Steve. People can be like, "What's up, Sam?" I think that's the difference. There's like an approachability to Sam as a character and a persona. I think that that really makes him like a guy who is probably a little bit more relatable. And then you factor in other stuff like, Steve is like, canonically probably over 100 years old at this point. And, like his cultural references, he's always gonna be a man on a time, no matter how long he's been thought out. And we can talk about the Marvel sliding timeline as much. Yeah, exactly. But he's always, that's inherent to his character, right? Again, without getting too deep into spoilers, one of the reasons we want to set the scenes at Isaiah Bradley's birthday parties because to show like Sam has family, like Sam has family, even Isaiah has family. Obviously, Elijah is an established superhero character, but Steve, poor Steve, he's all alone, and I think that's one way to accentuate that difference that's there. But like also, the story we want to tell is about like, what do you leave behind for other people? When you're these characters, can you leave anything behind at all? And what are the terms on which they might have to accept it.
Yeah, and who are you working for, and what does that mean? You know what I mean? And like what and what are the you're here to I mean, and this has always been Captain America stories. You know what I mean? This throughout the whole thing. It's like, are you here to defend the country or the laws of the
Yes.
country? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like, well, like, or
Mhm.
are you here to defend? Like, are you here to serve? I I can't remember where this is. Like I serve the flag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't serve you. I don't
No,
serve
I
the
think that's from Born
authority.
Again, Greg.
Yeah, I think.
It is in Born Again.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
been
there
used
you
a
go.
few times, but
Yeah,
definitely famously in Born
I'm loyal
Again.
to
Yeah.
nothing, gentlemen,
exactly. I
Except
mean,
the
and
except the
that.
flag.
dream.
I mean,
Yeah,
not to get too.
except the dream. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Exactly. Right. And
Yeah.
that's with all these characters. I mean, this resonates with me a ton. Just like as not to get too much information here, but like so I was an Asian American Boy Scout growing up in Texas in the 1980s, and my friends were great, but I remember like one of my formative experiences was like being like 7 or 8 years old, walking like from the bus stop to my house past a park and seeing a bunch of Cub Scouts, white kids, and going over to say hi, thinking like, oh, they're fellow Cub Scouts, and then getting surrounded and they're like doing the racist, Chinese, Japanese, what are these things at me? You know what I mean? I'm half Asian. I'm half Korean and half white. But I've always identified as Asian American, because I am, and also because when I was a kid, I looked straight up Asian. You know what I mean? These kids didn't have any question that this was an Asian kid.
You still do,
But
Greg.
yeah, yeah, okay, cool. So, but that experience of like, experiencing that kind of racism at that age, but also knowing that it was wrong. You know what I mean? Knowing
Mhm.
that like I didn't feel any guilt about it. I wasn't, because I was a Cub Scout and I knew about the principles of the country. You know what I mean? And so I was angry and self-righteously angry in a good way, I think, that uh but um but that was that kind of showed that division between the ideals of the country and the reality of the country, and the ideals of the country and the rulers of the country, frankly. You know what I mean? That can always exist. But anyway, so those are, like those kinds of things are things that
Yeah, those are ideas that are like swirling all around the story we're trying to
yeah.
tell. So
All
that
right.
was
So
one question, y'all.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's
That's
a
awesome.
lot to unpack, or should I say unpack there. So I want to get back to the pitch just because there's another question from a patron that I think it's on a lot of people's minds. So and by the way, I also will say with the new movie coming out February 14th, I want to say it certainly makes sense for Marvel wanting to have a new Sam Wilson series in the comic shops because as a former comic shop owner myself, I always appreciated having new series to point customers to and say who may be inspired by what they saw on the screen. So, which ties into our next question from a patron of the show.
Yeah. So Tom Boy, one of our loyal patrons for a long time, wants to know how much input or discussion do you have with Marvel Studios when a product like a new book like yours comes out sort of around the same time as a film? Like, how much coordination goes into that lineup of the debut of the comic and the film?
Well, the most honest answer I can give is like, we don't know. Like that all goes through editorial, right?
Yeah.
Like most of your listeners will know that the vast majority of comics creators are work for hire contractors, right? So, we are independent agents in the battle for justice and paying our mortgages. But yeah, we didn't get any notes. We didn't get any feedback.
So was
Like
there any direction like
Here's your
Red
deadline.
Hulk or Isaiah Bradley in your story or anything like that?
The only thing we got that I remember was, do something fun
yeah,
with, like a
Good
fun
advice.
adventure with Sam and use the Red Hulk somewhere.
yeah.
You know,
It's like it's basically common sense. Um, use the characters that moviegoers will recognize from their on-screen experience, right? So Joaquin's in there, uh, the Red Hulk's in there, but like I don't know how behind the scenes we're gonna get here, but like it was me that pitched Isaiah. You know, like
that's what I want to know.
nobody,
That's what I want to hear more about.
nobody told us to use Isaiah. I was
Yep.
like, you know, if memory serves, Isaiah and Steve and Sam haven't met in the comics. Again, I could be wrong, and you know, I'm sure you two gentlemen with all your Captain America knowledge will correct me. But when that was part of the pitch, I was like, yeah, let's, you know, again, there are cultural histories inside the Marvel universe, and the thing about truth that still kills me to this day is like that last issue where Steve goes to visit Isaiah and he sees all the pictures of all the people who come to visit him throughout the decades, like, is incredibly touching to me because it shows you a couple of things. One, like I said, these cultural histories that are embedded in the fabric of the Marvel universe, like, are part of the story, right? How the people inside the Marvel universe interact with the events that happen is part of the juice, right? You know, so that's one. And two, it really homed in on this like two Americas idea that you sometimes see memed on social media, right? Where people, whether it's black people and white people, experiencing the same thing but with radically different viewpoints. And like, yeah, Steve kind of being like, I just found out about you. I didn't even know you were alive. And meanwhile, a history of this man's life is on the walls of his home, right? So Isaiah's a character I love a lot. And you know, I think again, these parallel tracks of what it means to embody this patriotic legacy in superheroic fashion are like very much what we want to explore. So, you know, in terms of like orders from on high, we didn't get those, you know, like the story we're telling is so wild that like nobody could have told us to like here are your ingredients, now make this soup. It's like no, we completely
it really, yeah, it came about organically. We were like, I mean, I think we both came to the thing with like a few
yes, for
things that we
sure.
really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then we just started talking about it. It was like, oh my God, this fits like this and this. And I mean, we got big themes that are going to become clear once you're digging into it. But it's it is really, I think it's really something special. I mean, it is this like we are serving the mandate by doing a big fun sake adventure with Sam. Oh yeah, the other thing I want to do was we wanted to do is have Sam flying. Like that is something really distinct about Sam. He flies. You know what I mean? He's not he's a man. He's a what do you call it? Like a ground level hero, but he's in the air. You know what I mean? And that's metaphorically also part of it. Like he's the one who gets to be in the air. And what does that mean? You know what I mean? In terms of his community and everything else. But I don't know. There's just, as we were talking about, all this stuff just developed organically. It couldn't have been, you know, it couldn't have happened any other way than with this specific creative team. So it's fun. You know, it's interesting though, because you ask about, you know, sort of dealing with, you know, mandates or whatever. I mean, you know, like within, like I have not had, I haven't worked on a Marvel book where, I mean, this is inside baseball or whatever, but I haven't personally been on a Marvel book where it's been like, well, the movie people say you can't do this or they want you to do this. That doesn't, I mean, I've worked on Star Wars books and that happens all the time because that's the nature of the thing. You know what I mean? Like those are more like, you know, exactly. Right. But that's also been great because we were working directly with the Lucasfilm people who freaking love the comics and really are working with us to make that stuff work, to give us really cool things that we can work with. So I don't want to act like it's always perfect and smooth sailing, but I do feel like with all of this stuff, folks really just want to tell good stories. And so you know, like Evan and I would come up with all this stuff and we'd be a little nervous. It's like, this is big stuff we're pitching. And then they just feel like, do it. You know what I mean? So it's been really, really exciting on that level.
Just to piggyback on the comics and studios relationship, again, we don't know a lot because we're probably going to be the last to know. And in a way that's good, I think, you know, like I don't want to be told that, okay, here's, you know, plot number C/27A and, you know, execute it along these terms. Like that's not creative freedom, right? That said, you know, I wrote Rise of the Black Panther. I was writing Rise of the Black Panther when the first Black Panther was going to come out. And, you know, just to hammer home, I knew nothing, right? And, you know, I wind up making Killmonger central to the plot of that series, because I'm like, he's T'Challa's like number one enemy. Like, forget Claw, like whatever. He's got to share Claw with the Fantastic Four and whatnot. But like, Killmonger's all his own. Write the story, and it's about Killmonger's return to Wakanda. And next thing you know, I'm at the movie premiere seeing the movie and be like, oh, they're the same thing. But I think what's great is we did it in very different ways. In ways that show off the strengths of the two different forms. So, I think if you're a Marvel Comics fan and a fan who loves these characters, and you're, engaging with them in different media, then you really are getting like a full kind of spectrum of the themes and ideas that these characters can embody.
Another patron had sent a question, Mark Domeyer, and he said, "How does your writing process work as a team? Does one of you do more of the plotting, or one more scripting, or is it a true Marvel team up?" And it's true. Like we've had writers Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly come on. The Hive Mind, right? And they've been on a few times. And he described the way they do it is they divide up like sections of the story. How do you guys handle this?
Yeah, it's been pretty 50-50. I'll say, when we were pitching and outlining and plotting, like we're just constantly bouncing stuff back and forth with each other, like over email or text message. And, like the goal when you're working in comics, because it's such a deeply collaborative form, is to excite your creative partners, right? So like, Greg and I would be texting back and forth, like just so excited. Like I remember one point I was like, hold on, here's how we handle this scene. And he's like, yeah, and vice versa, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's like there's certain points when like we're talking about some moment, and then Evan will be like, and then he says this, you know what I mean? And he's like texting me the "get off my plane" kind of line, you know what I mean? Like that perfect line, and it's like, yes, oh my God, it's all we're like practically writing the script while texting. You know what I mean? Like so, and and then so we're working out the details of the plot, both by talking and texting each other and emailing each other, and then also by and so that by the time we're actually writing the script, it's all, I mean, like we've already figured out what it's about and what all the beats are. It is that kind of thing too, where it's sort of funny because sometimes like the scene that you originally came up with is not even a scene that you end up writing. The other guy ends up writing that, and you don't even think about it. It's just like it just makes sense. You know what I mean? And then we rewrite each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
the way it's gone so far is like Greg will do one half, I'll do the other, and then we'll revise each other's pages and tweak things. Like, so it's been deeply collaborative. And honestly, like I wish I got to work like this more often, because Greg is great. Like I can't sing this man's praises enough. Like, no, seriously, like Greg has written some of my most favorite stories. I've probably talked his ear off to death, but like the scene in the Hulk run where we kind of catch up with Bruce. Amadeus is taking over the Hulk identity, and Bruce is kind of like no gamma, just living his life, and you see him find peace. I was like, scenes like this have happened before, but this one really, really hits in a way that was amazing. And I get to work and learn from this guy. Like Greg's like dialogue economy and kind of innate sense of like pacing, I think is amazing. So yeah.
No, I mean it's a joy working with Evan. I mean, for all those same reasons, it's like there's a thing about collaboration when it's when you're working together and it's the right project and you're really clicking, where it's like just stuff gets so much better. You know what I mean? Like there's stuff that like I'd write in under normal circumstances, I'd be like, that's good, and then it just and then Evans just does something with it, and it's like, oh, that sometimes it's like that whole scene just now makes sense on this other deeper level, or maybe it's just as simple as that. Now that line really resonates. You know what I mean? Like now it really hits. And that happens all the time. It just gets better, and that's I mean,
just a little bit of foreshadowing. There was a plot problem we had, and I was like, well, maybe this solves a problem. And then Greg took that and ran with it. And then if, by the end of the series, it just snowballs into something like completely good. Yeah, I'm talking around spoilers, but
Yeah,
yeah,
you don't want to
you
give
know,
anything away, right?
but at the same time, I can say this, like, the mode we're operating in, like, I've been thinking more about this, Greg, and we haven't talked about it, but it's like, it really is like a completely wild science fiction, like 1970s Silver Age
Yeah.
mode. Like, it's, huh, you know, like, the thing I can probably most reference back to is like you read some of these golden age stories where okay, this character's on another planet all of a sudden, and they're dealing with aliens, and we're not going that far, but like Sam is so far beyond the remove of his normal kind of like remit, like it feels exciting to be writing him this way.
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, this is the thing that I mean we're like we're really tooting our own horn here, but I do love the giant sci-fi stuff we're doing. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're going there. We're just going there, and it's like big. Like I mean, comics should be weird, and it's big and
Yeah,
weird and fun in a big way, but it's not random. You know what I mean?
no,
It
no,
all ties in, and it ties into the whole sort of political reality of this world that we're laying out, and it ties in thematically. You know what I mean? Like on this emotional level of like Sam in the sky and what it means to be the guy from the community who gets to fly and all that. You know what I mean? Like it just works on so many different levels, and I just love it when that happens. So
Well, you
eh,
you brought up politics.
yeah.
So here we are. We're recording on the night right before Election
Oh
Day in the
my
United
God,
States.
yes.
I'm just curious. Did not knowing who the new president would be make your Sam Wilson story challenging at all? Like as far as the themes or what issues you wanted to tackle?
I mean, yes and no, right? Because gone are the days when you know I almost put my foot in my mouth. Gone are the days when um, Captain
Right.
America shows up to the White House, and the evil supervillain who's been in charge of a massive conspiracy like puts a gun to his head and pulls the trigger, right? Um, and uh, that's the thing that happened in the original Secret Empire storyline. So directly meeting, I think, real life characters is always really dicey because it dates your comics in a way that like doesn't always serve them well. But like I said before, Captain America's a character who's always spoken to political realities. Like there's that great what if where he's giving a speech at a political convention after an imposter had taken his place, and like that was during the 70s. That was during like a time of great economic depression and seeming like erosion of ideals that the country was based on, right? So like Cap's always played in this space. As for us, it's like you know Captain America is a patriotic superhero symbol, right? So like, you know, um, he's a character that you can use to explore, like Greg said, the gaps between ideals and reality. Um, so like with the election looming, it felt like, okay, we're writing a character who comes from a marginalized community, historically marginalized community. Um, it would be a missed opportunity to not speak to that. Um, but again, I think what we're doing is weaving in thematically through the book and letting the characters take us on the journey with them, right? So, and the other thing is like the nature of like political discussions and when they're dealt with in a symbolic realm like comic books is like your villains really stand in for like what are the evils of the day, right? So like Englehart hated the Nixon era, like he didn't like having Richard Nixon as president, so he went at him pretty hard. We're not doing
Or Mark
something.
Mark Grunwald with Ronald Reagan.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're not doing that. But what we are talking about is like, well, you know what? If the world is unjust, why?
Yeah.
Who gets pushed to the margins and who's doing the pushing?
Yeah, our villain is going to be our villain is no matter who is president, our villain would be there regardless. Our villain's a billionaire, and a particularly nasty one. And I think a lot of Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, can agree that
You got a lot to pick from.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
right.
right.
But yeah, no, I mean, like Evan said, we're dealing with, we're not trying to do story ripped from the headlines in terms of like story ripped from the headlines of this specific election, but there are eternal political questions that deal with American society in general and bigotry and authoritarianism and exploitation that are absolutely we're addressing in this book and grappling with and in I think complicated ways. You know what I mean? Like there are it's not like we're looking at all the shades of gray here. And I'll just tease that we've talked about multiple Black Captain Americas. There's more coming than you're going to see in the first issue, and it's going to get deeper and more complicated.
So we've got another patron question for you guys, and it comes from Aaron Paul, who by the way claims to be Sam Wilson's biggest fan.
Awesome.
And yeah, and he asks, my question for Evan and Greg is, what kind of voice and characterization can we expect from Sam in this series? From Rick Remender, Nick Spencer, Tochi Onyebuchi, and now Jed MacKay, every writer has the same, but a little bit of a different voice for Sam. Is this Sam Wilson exclusively yours, or will you pull influences from previous writers? And by the way, he wishes you the best on your run.
Thank you, Aaron, for the question. Since I'm talking, I'll start. I've read a lot of those runs. I think, one of the great things about working in mainstream superhero comics with these legacy characters is that there's always a baton pass, whether it's explicit or implicit, right? I think one of the things that we're carrying over, say from Tochi's run, is like, he had that great issue where like Sam goes to the comedy club and he's getting roasted. Sam's a man of the people, like he walks among us, to get all Stan Lee with it, right? Like he's a dude who will be walking down the street, like, and people know him, and not just know him like they recognize his face or his costume, but like, hey, when you were a social worker, you helped me out. Or, like, remember that time we were feeding the pigeons on the rooftop? Like, he's that kind of a guy, right? So, but he's also a guy who has to go and, broadcast an emergency message to the entire world when the vampires take over, right? So he has to be like the speechifying symbol, rally the troops kind of guy, but also a dude who's like, yeah, represents what people are fighting for. He's very close to all of that. I think, he's not rich. He doesn't have like a fancy apartment. He's just a guy, he doesn't have super shoulder shim running through his veins, like he's a guy who works hard and believes the best in people. The social worker aspect is incredibly important to who Sam Wilson is, because, he's a guy who could have gotten a fancy college degree and made himself rich and left, Harlem before it got gentrified and fancy like it is now. And I say this as somebody who lived through Harlem's gentrification on 120th Street. But he didn't. He's like, okay, I have a chance to go to college. I'm going to go pursue a degree that lets me help my fellow man. And that's who Sam Wilson is to me, like Greg said, probably believes in many of the same ideals as Steve and other characters who worn this mantle and costume, but embodies them a different way. And that's who I think our Sam is. He's funny. That's the other thing. I think Sam, like, because he embodies the symbolism a different way, like you can have a lot more texture in his interactions with other characters, his own family, so that's who we're trying to write.
Yeah.
Greg, did I get anything wrong, Greg?
No, no, I'm with you on all that. I mean, it'll be up to readers to judge, to say, what how the voice feels to them. I think you're gonna like it. You know what I mean? I think one thing that may be distinctive here, which I like a lot, and Evan was kind of talking about this, but to be even more specific, Sam is gonna spend a lot of time with his cousin Billy.
Yeah.
And his cousin Billy has a very distinct voice, and she says exactly what she's thinking all the time. She doesn't care about, like, she's not trying to represent the country or ideals or whatever. She's kind of a hustler. I mean, she is a hustler. She's just, she's trying to make it in this world. And she's also she's known him forever. And so she has no special respect for him. But that kind of, the fact that he's always talking to her throughout this whole story means that you're going to hear a different kind of, because people talk to different people in different ways. You know what I mean? And so you're going to see a different kind of, of talk there, which I think is great. And I think is really actually really appealing. You know what I mean? When you see somebody, it's like anything. You know somebody in a business context, and you see them with their family, and suddenly you see a whole different side of them, and you love it. I hope it feels that way for folks.
I just wanted to say, I'm really, I'm sort of heartened, particularly with what you said, Evan, about. I mean, you've talked a lot about Sam's background as a social worker, and I'm glad that you're putting so much emphasis on that, because it's such an important profession, and we don't see a lot in common. We see a lot of military officers, we see a lot of police, and these are heroes in our community, just like community organizers. And so I'm glad that you're accentuating. I think that's vitally important, and not just from a storytelling perspective, but just for giving props to the folks who do that important work in our community. So thank you for that.
Thanks for that. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Bob, I think Ash has a really, really important question.
Yeah. Ash wants to know, do you think Sam can pick up Mjolnir?
Oh, wow.
Oh man.
Okay. I would say yes. Yes. Like, look, Odin puts the enchantment on the hammer. Thor has to be worthy, right? And like, what is part of Thor's path to worthiness in the comics was learning humility, right? Like Thor Odin's son will come down and drink all this mead with the Vikings, and like cause a whole bunch of trouble, piss off his dad, and that's why he couldn't lift the hammer. That's why the enchantment was put on it, right? Like Sam's not that kind of guy, right? Sam, by virtue of being a man of the people, trying to serve his community, I think he has that humility. I think he has that worthiness, and I think he can lift. I think he can lift that hammer and throw it, and could fly after it, which is something Steve couldn't do.
That's amazing. You just got me thinking now. Like, my writer's brain's kicking in now, and now I want to write a Thor story, because I hear you ask that, and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't like the idea of, like, you are worthy or you are not worthy. I think it's like, I mean, I'm going to borrow from G. Willow Wilson, who says, like, good is not a thing you are, it's a thing you do, right? So I'm going to say Sam could pick it up if it's the right moment and the right time. You know what I mean? And if he's ready to do what needs to be done, he absolutely could pick it up. But maybe at another time he's not the right person for that job. You know what I mean? And what does that mean? So now I want to write a whole Thor story that actually just follows Mjolnir. It's like the Winchester 73, the old Anthony Mann Western, where you follow this gun around from person to person. I want to follow Mjolnir around from person to person, depending on
that would be cool.
Who's ready to pick him up. So now I'm going to actually pitch this. I'm going to see if I can actually do this at some point.
I'm about to say, I don't know who's editing Thor right now, but holler at your boy Greg Pak.
I should do podcasts more often.
And that's legit a story angle I don't think I've seen before. Like,
yeah.
Let's go.
You got me. You got the old noggin working here. I appreciate that.
Greg, so I want to discuss your Red Skull Incarnate story from 2011. Just real quick, it's a 5-issue limited series. We get to see a deeper look into a young Johann Schmidt. going past what we learned from the Skull's own stories in the pages of Captain America 298 and 350. It appears to have been really extensive research, and you intertwined a lot of historical events at the time. And you said in your afterword in issue 1, quote, I took on Red Skull Incarnate because, like countless others who have learned a little about the Holocaust, I struggled to understand how a nation, often described as the most cultured in Europe, could descend into the unfathomable barbarianism of the Nazi regime. To avoid repeating the horrors of the past, we desperately need to tell the stories of heroes who resist. But we also need to struggle with the question of how everyday people can so willingly embrace evil. Wow. Do you think you accomplished that with what you were hoping with that story?
That's I hope I did. That's really up to readers to decide. I mean, that was one of those books that was really hard to write. That and Magneto Testament were the two toughest books for me to write in my whole comics career, probably, because just reading that source material, that gave me nightmares for months. It's really unpleasant to say the least material to grapple with. The Red Skull book in particular was it was really it was tough because there I remember reading a lot of books about Hitler at the time, and there are folks who even talk about like the failure of biography when it comes to Hitler. Because if you start to like write a biography about Hitler, there's a sort of implication that you're going to explain Hitler, explain how Hitler came to be, and then that can easily fall into really pat narrative tricks that can end up being just totally wrong and even anti-Semitic in horrible ways. You know what I mean? Because like there's like one story that people sometimes tell is that Hitler had like I think it was literally a Jewish tailor or like there was a person who I think the man was a tailor, and that Hitler had a bad experience with this person, and so some biographers will talk about this as if that's like the source of Hitler's anti-Semitism, and then that becomes like an an atrocity, frankly, to try to explain it that way and like blame some random guy for Hitler. No, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like there's ways in which that kind of explanation that 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 kind of biography tries to tell can just be too facile and end up making a story that puts the blame on people who don't deserve it or whatever. At the same time, the reality of the horrible, horrible things that so many people are willing to do when they're allowed to do is a massive challenge for us to grapple with to this day. I mean, especially today. You know what I mean? When you see authoritarian movements rising all around the world, and people are always there are always people who are willing to justify the very worst things that human beings can do to each other. And why do people go along? Why do they not? I mean, I don't know that there are answers to that, but I think we have to ask those questions all the time. With Red Skull, I wasn't going to pretend to know or to be able to explain why this particular kid, this particular orphan became a Nazi and became basically, I mean, Marvel's most evil superhero. It doesn't explain that, but it does show that it happens in the world, and that circumstances will allow it to happen also. You know what I mean? Like a world in which that kind of atrocity is encouraged is a world in which people like that will commit those atrocities. I remember reading books about like psychopaths, and there was I remember there was a book that talked about the fact that you can have people who are total psychopaths but who never do anything, who are sociopaths, but who never hurt other people because they're in a society or and they're in a certain circumstance where it's not to their benefit. You know what I mean? It's like they're not breaking laws because they've got whatever, they can channel their their lack of empathy for other people into other ways, and it's not beneficial to them to actually hurt other people. But you have a world in which, like you got the hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic, and you've got you've got fascists who are telling people, who are picking out victims and scapegoats for people to hate on, and a society that is that's accepting that, and those psychopaths will do psychopathic things. Sociopaths will do sociopathic things. So maybe it's an indictment of, or a warning to us to craft more just societies from the get-go. Like you can't, in order to, so that these horrible things can to have less of a chance of them. I don't know. I tend to be a person who thinks a lot about care over punishment in general in life. And like we talk so much about, I live in New York City, like yes, there are horrible things that happen in the subway. There people have been pushed onto tracks in the subway. I mean, this is getting into a very specific politics, but my feeling is more cops on the subway isn't going to stop somebody with mental health issues and drug addiction issues from pushing somebody onto the subway, and somebody who's desperately poor or whatever from losing their mind and pushing somebody on the subway tracks. Having more cops on the subway, you can't have it. It's impossible to stop that kind of random thing through just policing. You have to get to the root of the precarity and the lack of care that ends up with a person like that feeling so desperate and violent that they're going to do that. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but I don't know. I mean, I like it when stories can make us think about stuff and not necessarily provide a single answer. You know what I mean? And I hope that's what the Red Skull book did.
Yeah, I will say, I almost felt pain for you as the writer, because for you to provide a human, perhaps sympathetic side to what may be the most vile and evil Marvel villain, that's a hard thing, to do. But I think you handled it very well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was, I mean, I was very lucky working with Mirko Cholak, the artist on that book. Just did an amazing job. And Alejandro Arbona was our editor, and he really cared a lot and really made that whole thing, made the space for us to really do the work. So I appreciate it.
And to all our listeners out there, I just want to say, as a reminder, Sam Wilson, Captain America, the series comes out January 1st. So ring in the new year with a new Captain America book. But remember, it has a comic dealer order cutoff next week, November 25th. So if you want to guarantee it being held for you at your local comic shop, make sure you let them know.
Yeah, order before Thanksgiving, get it on New Year's. How about that?
Hey, I like that.
Hey, I ordered mine over the weekend.
Oh, hey,
and I got to tell you, I ordered more than just cover A.
Oh, cool.
I really want to support this book, and I love the variant covers, and so I encourage everyone to do likewise.
Oh yeah, you know what? Before we close, I do want to give a big plug to our to a couple of other people on the team. Fernando Cifuentes is doing the colors of the interiors, and they are gorgeous. Yeah. And Torrin Clark is doing the covers. Not only doing the covers, but doing some character design stuff for pretty.
That's
cool.
all we'll say. That's it.
Yeah. That's all we're gonna say. for a surprise.
Oh, we're so close, Bob, to getting a little. So close to getting a little.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do want to ask you what else you've got coming up in 2024. Anything you can share with us on your projects, or anything in specific you want to plug?
Gosh, you know what? I got a bunch of stuff, but I'm just realizing most of this stuff is secret right now. What do I have that I can talk about?
That's fine.
I got I'm doing the Lilo and Stitch book for Dynamite. I got 2 new Marvel things that are really mind blowing. I'm co-writing a new thing with Fred Van Lente. If you liked the Hercules book that we did back in the day, do not
Every
miss
time you
this
do
new
that,
book.
I want to go Hercules, Hercules, but
You're not the only one. Yes.
Yeah, it's so but yeah, Fred and I mean I've worked with him so much over the years, and he's just a ton of fun. And this particular, if you like the Hercules book, you do not miss this new book that we're doing. I can say no more, but keep your eyes open.
What about Lawful?
Oh yeah, right, of course. And I got my creator book Lawful. That's Diego Galindo is drawing. It's about a world in which if you commit any crime or if you break any rule, it shows up on your body. You start to turn into a monster.
Oh, wow.
And that's
Wow.
coming out from Boom. It's a kind of a urban fantasy sort of setting, and it's gorgeous. Irma Canavilla is doing the colors, and she's got this incredible organic watercolor kind of feel to the whole thing. It's sort of a modern fairy tale sort of thing, and yeah, it's basically about this. Again, too much information. It's about the struggles of a lawful good kid in a world that's probably chaotic neutral at best. So
when does it come out?
it is. We're actually up to issue number 5 is about to come out.
Oh, I
So
was not aware of this. That
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
sounds pretty cool.
But
That's
check
through
it out.
Boom. Yeah.
But yes, through Boom. And thank you, Evan. You're saving me here. Thank you.
I wasn't lying when I said you're a writer I admire. Pak.
Oh,
My turn, I guess. This is the only thing I can talk about in comics. I have a few other things cooking that I'm not at liberty to discuss. One of them is extremely exciting, but enough said about that. And the game I'm working on, I can't talk about, but hopefully we'll be able to share some information soon. In the meantime, go back and read stuff from my back catalog, whether it's like the Milestone 30th Anniversary Special, story I did in DC Power Anthology. Again, I'm just mentioning DC stuff. But also Rise of the Black Panther and the Wakanda miniseries, which is now collected in trade paperback, where I did some backups that I'm really proud of, exploring the history of the Black Panthers throughout the centuries.
And you guys you're going to keep us posted on the Mjolnir travels,
yes,
right?
I will.
And
If
I'm
I actually
serious.
get that done, I'm gonna come back here and make you guys have me as a guest, even though it might not have Captain America in it,
all
because
right,
yeah.
it was born here. So if that happens, I'm also I'm gonna find out what your favorite candy is. I'm gonna send you a big box.
we're gonna send it to Ash. It was her question, but we also, we made this pitch at Alana. We want to see more Isaiah Bradley, maybe a mini series or a one shot that explores his history a little more in depth. So maybe we can see
You're
that.
not the only who wants that. You're not the
All
only one.
right, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, listen, Greg, Evan, thank you so much for taking some time to come on the show and tell us a little bit more about this new series. We're very excited for it, and we can't wait to get to it.
Y'all, this was a total blast. Really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yes. All right. You guys take care. Have a good night.
Well, Bob, if you weren't excited for the new series before, you should be now, because that really whet my appetite to really get into this Sam Wilson series.
Yeah, I mean, they were super careful about not giving away too much or any, for that matter, spoilers. But what they did tell us about the characters that were going to be in the book and some of the finer details of sort of the context and characterization was enough to get me really excited about reading this story. And man, it's going to be awesome, right? I mean, I know we're comic book guys. We're going to have this come out in January, and then we're going to have the movie coming out. It's going to be Sam Wilson Overdrive, and I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, you know what? I think probably we need to put on the docket is when the Sam Wilson Captain America #1 comes out, we should cover that panel by panel.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's definitely worth doing.
And then also when the movie comes out, we should, remember back in the day when the Captain America and Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah.
Series, we had every time there was an episode, we had guests come on and we talked about it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
We definitely have to do that for the new movie.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we have connections to the world's biggest Sam Wilson fan, so
no, that's true.
Might want to have him on.
And then we also have connections with the couple editors too in the Captain America legacy line. So we may be bringing him back on the show to talk about what is possibly in the future
Yeah.
for Steve Rogers and the Captain America mythos.
Right. Did I hear correctly that Steve makes a little appearance in the book?
I don't recall hearing that.
I thought they were talking about the barbecue, and Steve was there at the barbecue. So
I don't remember hearing that, but I think maybe they alluded to that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, that'd be nice to see.
All right, next episode, we are going to get back to our long tail story of covering the Secret Empire, which Evan did mention a couple of times into today's conversation. But we've been doing this panel by panel review of the Steve Englehart story, Secret Empire, from 1974. And this next one is going to be part 4, which covers Captain America 173. So make sure you come back next episode where we cover that panel by panel. And Bob, as always, it's been so much fun wrapping cap with you.
It has. I can't wait till next week, Rick.
All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis. And if you don't mind, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. If you're on YouTube right now, please smash that thumbs up button. If you're on Facebook, leave a comment. If you're on Apple, leave us a 5-star review. We always truly appreciate your feedback. And as always, thank you for listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.